The golden throne room stretched endlessly before Emperor Zhang Wei, its marble columns reaching toward a ceiling painted with ancient dragons. He sat rigid on his throne, his face as cold as the December wind that rattled the palace windows. The servants called him the Dragon Emperor, not for his wisdom or strength, but for the fire that burned in his eyes when anyone dared to displease him. Zhang Wei had not always been this way. Once, he had been a young prince who laughed at festivals and played in the palace gardens. But 20 years of ruling had turned his heart to stone. Wars, betrayals, and the death of his beloved wife had stolen every trace of warmth from his soul. Now, at 45 years old, he ruled with an iron fist over the vast empire of Tianlong. The palace staff whispered that he had forgotten how to smile. They said his face would crack like old porcelain if he ever tried. The ministers bowed, so low they nearly touched the ground, terrified of meeting his gaze. Even the birds in the palace gardens seemed to sing more quietly when he passed by. On this particular December morning, snow fell softly on the palace roofs, turning the forbidden city into a wonderland of white. But Zhang Wei saw none of its beauty. He sat reviewing tax documents, his expression growing darker with each page. The numbers blurred before his eyes, not from fatigue, but from the endless repetition of his days. Wake, work, sleep. No joy, no sorrow, just the mechanical routine of ruling. Your Majesty. A trembling voice interrupted his thoughts. Minister Chen approached, his silk robes rustling with each nervous step. The trade delegation from the western provinces has arrived. Zhang Wei didn't look up. Send them to the formal reception hall. I will see them when I finish these documents. But, Your Majesty, they have been traveling for 3 months. Perhaps. The Emperor's eyes flashed dangerously. Did I ask for your opinion, Minister Chen? The minister backed away, bowing repeatedly. No, Your Majesty. Forgive me. As Minister Chen scurried away, Zhang Wei returned to his papers. But something nagged at him, a small voice in the back of his mind. When had he become so cold that even showing basic courtesy to tired travelers seemed like weakness? He pushed the thought away. Emotions were luxuries he could not afford. The empire needed strength, not sentiment. His subjects needed food and protection, not a ruler who wasted time on feelings. The hours passed in silence, broken only by the scratch of his brush on paper and the distant sound of servants' footsteps. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows through the tall windows. Zhang Wei worked through lunch, as he always did. Food was fuel, nothing more. As afternoon approached, a commotion arose in the courtyard below. Zhang Wei frowned. Rising from his throne to peer out the window, a small figure in a bright red coat was arguing with the palace guards. The child, for it was clearly a child, gestured wildly, her voice carrying up to the throne room despite the distance. I need to see my father, the child insisted. It's important. Zhang Wei's frown deepened. What child would dare claim him as a father? He had no children. His wife had died before. The memory hit him like a physical blow. Mei Lin, his wife, had been pregnant when she died. The physicians had saved the baby, a daughter, but Zhang Wei had been so consumed with grief that he had ordered the child sent away. She had been raised by his sister in a distant province, far from the palace and its painful memories. That had been 7 years ago. He had never seen the child, never asked about her, tried to forget she existed. She was a living reminder of everything he had lost. And now impossibly she was here. Zhang Wei returned to his throne, his mind racing. Why had his sister brought the child to the palace? He had made it clear that he wanted no reminders of his past life. The arrangement had worked perfectly for 7 years. The child received the best education, the finest clothes, everything she could need, except a father. Your Majesty. Another servant appeared, prostrating himself on the marble floor. Princess Liu Mei has arrived from the southern province. She insists on seeing you. Liu Mei. They had named her after her mother. Of course they had. Send her away, Zhang Wei commanded, his voice harsh. I gave clear instructions that she was to remain in the south. The servant trembled. Your Majesty, your sister Lady Liu Yin accompanies her. She says it is urgent. Zhang Wei's jaw tightened. His younger sister had always been rebellious, but to defy his direct orders? This was unprecedented. Send my sister to me. Alone. Minutes later, Liu Yin swept into the throne room. Unlike the cowering ministers, she stood tall, meeting her brother's glare with steady eyes. She had their mother's stubborn streak, and it showed in every line of her body. "Brother," she said, bowing only slightly. "I know you're angry, but you need to listen." "I need to do nothing," Zhang Wei replied coldly. "You have disobeyed my explicit commands. Give me one reason why I shouldn't have you arrested for treason." Liu Yin laughed, actually laughed, in his throne room. "Arrest your own sister? Even you aren't that far gone, Wei. Though sometimes I wonder. Do not test me, Yin." She softened slightly, taking a step closer. "Wei, I didn't come here to fight. I came because your daughter needs you. I have no daughter. The child sleeping in my guest quarters would disagree. She has your eyes, you know, and your stubborn chin." Zhang Wei turned away, staring at a tapestry depicting ancient dragons in flight. "Why now? Why bring her here after all these years?" Liu Yin sighed. "Because she's been asking about you. Every day, Wei. She draws pictures of what she thinks you look like. She makes up stories about why her brave father had to send her away. She thinks you're protecting the Empire from demons, and that's why you can't visit." Something twisted in Zhang Wei's chest, a feeling he couldn't name. "She's better off with her illusions. Is she? Or are you better off without having to face reality?" Liu Yin moved closer, her voice gentle now. "Wei, I've raised her as my own, and I love her dearly. But she needs her father, and whether you admit it or not, you need her too. I need nothing but a cold throne and bitter memories." Liu Yin interrupted. "Look at yourself, Wei. When did you last smile? When did you last feel anything other than anger? You're not living, you're just existing." Zhang Wei whirled around, fury in his eyes. "My wife died. She died carrying that child. Every time I would look at her, you would see Mei Lin's daughter," Liu Yin said firmly. "A little girl who has done nothing wrong except be born. A child who loves a father she's never met. And you know what? She doesn't blame you. She thinks you're wonderful." The emperor sank into his throne, suddenly looking older than his years. "What does she want?" "To meet you. Just once." Liu Yin pulled something from her robes, a rolled piece of paper. "She made this for you." Zhang Wei took it reluctantly, unrolling it to reveal a child's drawing. It showed a tall figure in yellow robes standing next to a small girl in red. They were holding hands, and both were smiling. Above them, crudely drawn dragons flew through clouds. At the bottom, in careful characters, were the words, "My papa and me." His hands trembled slightly. The child had his nose. He could see that even in the simple drawing. And the way she had drawn the dragons, with their long whiskers and kind eyes, it was exactly how Mei Lin used to draw them. "She's been learning about Christmas," Liu Yin continued. The foreign merchants told her stories about the holiday, about families coming together and giving gifts. She insisted on coming here to give you a Christmas present. "We don't celebrate Christmas," Zhang Wei said automatically. "She doesn't care about that. She just wanted an excuse to finally meet you." Liu Yin studied her brother's face. "One meeting, Wei. If you still want us to leave after that, we will. But give her and yourself this chance." Zhang Wei stared at the drawing for a long moment. The little girl had colored herself so carefully, making sure every detail of her dress was perfect. She had drawn her father with a crown of golden dragons, making him look heroic and kind. Not at all like the cold man he had become. "Where is she now?" he asked quietly. "In my quarters, practicing her greeting. She's terrified she'll say something wrong, and you'll send her away forever." The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. This child, his daughter, was afraid of him, and she had every right to be. He had abandoned her, refused to acknowledge her existence, all because he was too wrapped in his own pain to see hers. What kind of present could a 7-year-old child possibly have for an emperor? He asked, trying to maintain his emotional distance. Liu Yin smiled sadly. "You'll have to meet her to find out. But I promise you, it's nothing you could buy with all the gold in the treasury." Zhang Wei stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Below in the courtyard, He could see the small footprints in the snow where his daughter had stood arguing with the guards. Such determination for one so young. Just like her mother. Your Majesty? A new voice interrupted. It was Captain Wu, head of the palace guard. The princess she's escaped from Lady Lu's quarters. We're searching for her now. Lu Yin gasped. Escaped? Where could she have gone? Captain Wu looked uncomfortable. The guards at the main gate said she asked them many questions about the palace layout. She seemed particularly interested in a memorial garden. Zhang Wei's blood ran cold. The memorial garden was where Mei Lin was buried. How could the child have known? I told her stories, Lu Yin whispered, about her mother's favorite place in the palace. I never thought she would. Without another word, Zhang Wei strode from the throne room, his golden robes billowing behind him. For the first time in years, the emperor ran. He ran through hallways he had walked with measured steps, past startled servants who had never seen him move with such urgency. The memorial garden was in the oldest part of the palace, a peaceful sanctuary of carefully tended flowers and ancient trees. At its heart stood a white marble pavilion, and beneath it, a simple stone marked with Mei Lin's name. Zhang Wei found her there, a small figure in red kneeling in the snow. She was placing something at the base of the memorial stone, a paper flower crudely made but crafted with obvious love. Hello, Mama, the child was saying softly. Liu Mei. I'm your daughter. Aunt Yin says I have your smile. She paused, her small shoulders shaking. I came to meet Papa, but I wanted to see you first. I hope you're not angry that I came without permission. Zhang Wei stood frozen at the garden entrance. The child looked so small, so vulnerable. Her black hair was escaping from its neat braids, and her red coat was dusted with snow. She couldn't have looked less like an imperial princess, yet something about her posture, the way she held herself, even while kneeling, spoke of an inner strength. I brought you a flower, Lu Mei continued, unaware of his presence. Aunt Yin taught me to make them. It's not as pretty as real flowers, but it won't die in the winter. She was quiet for a moment. I wish I could have met you. Aunt Yin says I would have loved you, and you would have loved me. But don't worry, I'll take care of Papa for you. If he lets me. The last words were whispered, so quietly Zhang Wei almost missed them. His daughter, and he could no longer deny that's what she was, believed he might reject her. The thought that this small child carried such fear broke through his defenses like water through a dam. He must have made a sound because Lu Mei's head whipped around. Her eyes, his eyes, but filled with Mei Lin's warmth, widened in recognition. She scrambled to her feet, brushing snow from her knees. Papa, she whispered. Zhang Wei couldn't speak. He stood there, the most powerful man in the empire, completely undone by a 7-year-old child. Lu Mei took a tentative step toward him, then another. She was studying his face with an intensity that reminded him painfully of her mother. You look sad, she said finally. Aunt Yin said you might be sad. Zhang Wei's voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. You should not have come here alone. It's dangerous. Lu Mei bit her lip, a gesture so like Mei Lin that it took his breath away. I am sorry. I just wanted to meet Mama before I met you. In case you sent me away again. The words were said without accusation, just a simple statement of fact. But they cut deeper than any blade. Why did you want to meet her first? Zhang Wei asked, genuinely curious despite himself. Lu Mei looked down at her feet. Because if you send me away, at least I could tell her I tried. And I could tell her you're okay, even if you're sad. Zhang Wei felt something crack inside his chest, like ice breaking on a frozen river. This child had come all this way, not for herself, but to ease her dead mother's imagined worries about him. Come, he said gruffly. It's cold. We should go inside. Lu Mei looked up at him hopefully. Does that mean I can stay? Just for a little while? Zhang Wei found himself nodding before he consciously made the decision. For a little while. The smile that bloomed on his daughter's face was like sunrise after the longest night. She took a step toward him, then hesitated. Papa, can I ask you something? What? Do you really have dragons? Aunt Yin says the emperor has dragons, but Cousin Ming says that's just stories. Despite everything, Zhang Wei felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Would you like to see the dragon tapestries in the throne room? Lu Mei's eyes went wide. Really? You'd show me, if you promise not to touch anything. I promise. I promise. She bounced on her toes, then, suddenly, went still. Papa, thank you for not sending me away. Zhang Wei looked down at his daughter, really looked at her for the first time. She had his stubborn chin, yes, but her mother's delicate features. Her eyes held an innocence he had forgotten existed in the world. And, despite everything, despite his abandonment and coldness, she looked at him with hope. Come, he said again, turning toward the palace. Your aunt will be worried. Lu Mei fell in a step beside him, having to take 3 steps for every one of his. She chattered as they walked, telling him about her journey, about the snow they had seen in the mountains, about the funny merchant who had taught her to fold paper flowers. Zhang Wei found himself listening, really listening. When was the last time someone had talked to him about something other than taxes or trade disputes or military campaigns? When had he last heard enthusiasm untainted by fear or calculation? As they entered the palace, servants stared in shock. The emperor, who never allowed anyone to walk beside him, was letting a small child skip at his side. More shocking still, he was listening to her rambling story about a rabbit she had seen from the carriage window. Your Majesty, Captain Wu appeared, looking relieved. We found, that is, I see you found the princess. Yes, Zhang Wei said simply. Please inform my sister that the princess is safe. And, shall I arrange for their departure? That won't be necessary, Zhang Wei heard himself say. They will stay through the New Year celebration. Lu Mei gasped, looking up at him with shining eyes. Really? We can stay. Zhang Wei nodded once, curtly. What was he doing? This child was everything he had tried to forget, everything painful and lost. But, looking at her joy, he found he couldn't send her away. Not yet. They climbed the great staircase to the throne room, Lu Mei's eyes growing wider with each step. The golden doors swung open to reveal the vast chamber, and she stopped in her tracks. It's so big, she whispered, and look at all the dragons. Indeed, dragons were everywhere, painted on the ceiling, woven into tapestries, carved into the throne itself. Lu Mei turned in a slow circle, trying to take it all in. They're beautiful, she breathed. Do you really command them? They're symbols, Zhang Wei explained, finding himself oddly compelled to educate her. The dragon represents the emperor's power and wisdom. Oh, Lu Mei considered this. But wouldn't it be more fun if they were real? Zhang Wei blinked. Fun? When had he last thought about fun? Perhaps. But ruling an empire is not about fun. Why not? Lu Mei asked with a directness only a child could manage. If you're the emperor, can't you make the rules? So why not make a rule that says ruling should be fun sometimes? The simplicity of her logic left him speechless. Before he could formulate a response, Lu Yin burst through the doors. Liu Mei! She rushed forward, pulling the child into a fierce hug. Don't ever scare me like that again. I'm sorry, Aunt Yin, Lu Mei said, her voice muffled against her aunt's robes. I just wanted to meet Mama. Lu Yin's eyes met Zhang Wei's over the child's head. And did you? Meet her? Yes. I gave her a paper flower. And then Papa found me. Lu Mei pulled back, beaming. And he didn't send me away. He says we can stay for New Year. Lu Yin's eyebrows rose. He did. Zhang Wei shifted uncomfortably under his sister's knowing gaze. The child has come a long way. It would be inefficient to send her back immediately. Inefficient, Lu Yin repeated, clearly fighting a smile. Of course. Lu Mei tugged on Zhang Wei's robe. Papa, can I give you your Christmas present now? We don't celebrate, Zhang Wei began, then stopped at the look of determination on his daughter's face. What present? Lu Mei reached in her coat and pulled out a small wrapped package. The paper was crumpled from her adventures, but she held it out proudly. I made it myself. Well, Aunt Yin helped a little. Zhang Wei took the package, surprised by how light it was. Under his daughter's expectant gaze, he carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a small wooden dragon, crudely carved but painted with obvious care. Its eyes were picked out in gold, and around its neck hung a tiny scroll. I carved it, Lu Mei explained eagerly. It took me weeks. And see the scroll? Open it. Zhang Wei unrolled the miniature scroll. In careful child's handwriting were the words, "For Papa. Love, Lu Mei." "It's a protection dragon," Lu Mei continued. "The merchant said that in the Christmas stories, people give gifts to show love. And I thought, what does an emperor need? And then I thought, maybe even emperors need protecting sometimes. So now you have a dragon to keep you safe." Zhang Wei stared at the little wooden dragon. It was rough, amateurish, the kind of thing that would never be allowed in the palace collection. One wing was slightly longer than the other, and the tail curved at an odd angle. It was the most precious thing he had ever held. "Thank you," he managed, his voice rough. Liu Mei beamed. "Do you really like it?" "I was worried because emperors probably have much better dragons, but Aunt Yin said it's the thought that counts." "Ah, yes, I like it very much." And, to his surprise, he meant it. This small, imperfect dragon, made by childish hands with love he didn't deserve, had done something all the tribute in the Empire couldn't do. It had made him feel. The emotions were painful, like blood returning to a long, numb limb. But underneath the pain was something else, something he had thought lost forever. A tiny spark of warmth, fragile as a candle flame, but unmistakably there. Lu Yin watched him carefully. Perhaps Lu Mei would like to see her quarters? "I'm sure she needs to rest after her journey." "I'm not tired," Liu Mei protested. "I want to stay with Papa." The words hung in the air. Stay with Papa. As if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if 7 years of absence meant nothing to a child's forgiving heart. "Your aunt is right," Zhang Wei said. "You should rest." "But," he paused, the words foreign on his tongue. "You may join me for the evening meal, if you wish." "Really?" Lu Mei's face lit up. "We can eat together? Like a real family?" "A real family." Zhang Wei's chest tightened. "Yes." Lu Yin took Lu Mei's hand, but the child pulled away for a moment, running back to Zhang Wei. She stopped just short of him, suddenly shy. "Papa, thank you for letting me stay. I promise I'll be good. I won't touch anything I shouldn't or make too much noise, or—" "Lu Mei," Zhang Wei interrupted. She looked up at him with those painfully familiar eyes. "You don't have to be perfect." The smile she gave him then could have melted winter itself. She nodded and ran back to Lu Yin, who led her from the throne room. At the door, Lu Mei turned and waved, her small hand enthusiastic in its motion. Zhang Wei found himself raising his hand in return, the gesture awkward but genuine. When they were gone, he sank into his throne, the little wooden dragon still clutched in his hand. The throne room, which had felt normal-sized just hours ago, now seemed vast and empty. The silence, which he had always treasured, felt oppressive. He looked down at the dragon. Its painted eyes seemed to twinkle up at him, as if sharing a secret. A protection dragon, she had said, to keep him safe. But safe from what? He had armies to protect him from enemies, walls to protect him from invasion, protocols to protect him from assassination. What could a wooden toy protect him from? The answer came unbidden, from himself, from the cold, bitter man he had become, from a life without joy, without love, without the laughter of a child echoing through empty halls. Zhang Wei carefully set the dragon on the arm of his throne, where he could see it. Then he called for his secretary. "Your Majesty?" The man appeared, bowing low. "Clear my schedule for the evening meal," Zhang Wei commanded. And have the kitchen prepare something a child might enjoy." The secretary blinked in surprise, but wisely said nothing except, "Yes, Your Majesty." As the man left, Zhang Wei picked up the dragon again. Such a small thing, carved by inexperienced hands. But it represented something larger, a child's love, freely given despite years of absence. A heart that had refused to harden despite rejection. Hope that persisted despite every reason to abandon it. For the first time in 7 years, Emperor Zhang Wei allowed himself to think about what might have been. If Mei Lin had lived, if he had raised his daughter, if he had chosen love over pain. But the past was carved in stone. Only the future remained malleable. He thought about Lu Mei's question, why couldn't ruling be fun sometimes? It was naive, of course. Ruling an empire was serious business. But when had serious become joyless? When had duty become drudgery? The little dragon seemed to grow heavier in his hand, weighted with possibility. His daughter had given him more than a toy. She had given him a choice. He could send her away again, return to his cold throne and bitter silence. Or he could try to be the father she had imagined in her drawings. Try to find again the man Mei Lin had loved. Try to let a child's Christmas gift transform not just a day, but a life. Zhang Wei stood, still holding the dragon. He walked to the window where he had watched Lu Mei argue with the guards. The sun was setting now, painting the snow-covered palace in shades of gold and rose. It was beautiful. When had he stopped noticing beauty? A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Enter. It was Lu Yan, alone this time. She approached slowly, as if he were a wild animal that might flee. Thank you, she said simply, for not sending her away. She's my daughter, Zhang Wei replied, the words strange but true. Yes, she is. Lu Yan joined him at the window. She's been preparing for this moment her entire life, you know. Every accomplishment, every lesson learned, she would say Papa will be proud when he meets me. The words were a knife to his heart. I don't deserve her faith. No, Lu Yan agreed. You don't, but she offers it anyway. The question is, what will you do with it? Zhang Wei was quiet for a long moment. I don't know how to be a father. You learn, day by day, mistake by mistake. Lu Yan touched his arm gently. Wei, you've punished yourself for 7 years. Mei Lin wouldn't have wanted that. Mei Lin is dead. Yes, but her daughter lives. And she needs you. Lu Yan paused. You need her too, whether you admit it or not. Look at yourself, Wei. When she gave you that dragon, it was the first time I've seen you look human in years. Zhang Wei looked down at the wooden dragon. It's just a toy. No, it's hope. It's love. It's everything you've been hiding from. Lu Yan squeezed his arm. Don't waste this chance. You might not get another. She left him alone with his thoughts. Zhang Wei returned to his throne, placing the little dragon carefully on a side table where he could see it. Then he picked up his abandoned tax documents, trying to return to work. But the numbers swam before his eyes. All he could see was Lu Mei's face when he said she could stay. All he could hear was her voice saying, Papa, with such easy affection. He set down his brush with a sigh. For 7 years, work had been his escape. But what was he escaping to? An empty throne room? A cold bed? A life measured in documents signed, rather than moments lived? The little dragon watched him from its perch, a silent reminder that somewhere in this vast palace, a child was preparing to have dinner with her father for the first time. A child who had traveled so far, hoped so much, asked for so little. Zhang Wei stood again, decision crystallizing. He couldn't change the past 7 years. He couldn't bring Mei Lin back, but he could choose what happened next. He summoned his personal attendant. Prepare my informal dining robes. The attendant's eyes widened. The emperor hadn't worn informal anything in years. Your Majesty, and have the small dining room prepared. The one with the view of the garden. Zhang Wei paused. The one where my wife used to take her meals. Yes, Your Majesty. The attendant hesitated. Shall I have the formal place settings? No. Simple settings. And Zhang Wei thought of Lu Mei's excitement. Perhaps have the kitchen prepare some of those sweet dumplings children enjoy. The attendant bowed and hurried away, no doubt to spread gossip about the emperor's unprecedented behavior. Zhang Wei didn't care. Let them talk. For too long, the palace had been a tomb. Perhaps it was time to let life back in. As he prepared for dinner, Zhang Wei found his thoughts returning to the wooden dragon. Such a simple gift, yet it had achieved what years of luxury tributes had not. It had reminded him that he was more than an emperor. He was a man, a father. The dragon was imperfect, yes. But perhaps that was the point. Perhaps perfection wasn't found in flawless jade carvings or priceless silk tapestries. Perhaps it was in a child's crooked smile, in paint-stained fingers, in a gift given with pure love. For the first time in 7 years, Emperor Zhang Wei felt the stirring of something he had thought dead forever. Anticipation. He was looking forward to dinner, looking forward to hearing his daughter's chatter. Looking forward to what? He didn't know. But for the first time in so long, not knowing felt like possibility rather than threat. The sun had fully set now, and servants were lighting lanterns throughout the palace. Their warm glow reflected off the snow, creating a magical atmosphere. It looked like something from Lu Mei's stories about Christmas, a time of miracles and transformation. Zhang Wei picked up the wooden dragon one more time, running his thumb over its roughly carved surface. Tomorrow, he would return to being the Dragon Emperor, stern and unyielding. But tonight he would try to be what Lu Mei needed. Not a perfect father, but a present one. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. And sometimes beginnings were their own kind of miracle. The small dining room hadn't been used in 7 years. As Zhang Wei entered, memories crashed over him like waves. This was where Mei Lin had loved to eat breakfast, claiming the morning light through the garden windows was perfect for starting the day. The round table, intimate compared to the formal banquet halls, still bore the faint mark where she had once spilled tea while laughing at one of his rare jokes. He had ordered this room sealed after her death, unable to bear the memories. Now servants scurried about, lighting candles and arranging dishes, bringing the space back to life. The air smelled of jasmine incense and fresh flowers. Someone had remembered Mei Lin's preferences. "Your Majesty," a servant bowed. "The princess and Lady Lu Yin have arrived." Zhang Wei nodded, steeling himself. He heard them before he saw them. Lu Mei's excited voice carrying down the corridor. "But, Aunt Yin, what if I use the wrong chopsticks? What if I spill something? What if, little one?" Lu Yan's patient voice replied, "Your father invited you to dinner, not to judge your table manners. Just be yourself." They appeared in the doorway, Lu Mei now wearing a simpler blue robe that made her look even younger. Her eyes widened when she saw the room, taking in the elegant but warm space. "It's beautiful," she breathed, then noticed Zhang Wei standing by the window. "Papa, Your Majesty." "Papa is fine," Zhang Wei said, the words feeling foreign but not unpleasant. "Come, sit." Lu Mei practically bounced to the table, then remembered herself and tried to walk more sedately. The effect was comical. A little girl trying so hard to be proper that she nearly tripped over her own feet. Lu Yin steadied her with a gentle hand. As they took their seats, Zhang Wei found himself studying his daughter more closely. She had Mei Lin's delicate hands, though hers bore small calluses from her carving work. Her hair, now neatly rebraided, had the same tendency to escape its bonds that her mother's had. But the determined set of her chin, the way she observed everything with sharp intelligence, that was purely his. "The kitchen has prepared several dishes," Zhang Wei began formally, then caught himself. This wasn't a state dinner, including sweet dumplings. Lu Mei's eyes lit up. "Really? I love sweet dumplings. Aunt Yin only lets me have them on special occasions." "This is a special occasion," Lu Yin said softly, her eyes on her brother. The servants began bringing dishes, simple fare by palace standards, but carefully prepared. Lu Mei watched with fascination as each dish was presented, asking questions about ingredients and cooking methods that surprised Zhang Wei with their sophistication. "Aunt Yin taught me to appreciate food," Lu Mei explained when she caught his look. "She says understanding what we eat helps us understand the world." "Your aunt is wise," Zhang Wei acknowledged, earning a surprised smile from his sister. As they began eating, an awkward silence fell. Zhang Wei realized he had no idea how to talk to a child. His interactions were limited to issuing commands and receiving reports. Small talk had never been his strength, even before Mei Lin's death. Lu Mei, however, seemed to have no such difficulties. "Papa, is it true that you once fought 100 bandits single-handedly?" Zhang Wei blinked. "Where did you hear that?" "The merchants in the southern market tell stories. They say you're the greatest warrior emperor in history." She leaned forward eagerly. "Did you really? Fight them?" Zhang Wei glanced at Lu Yan, who was hiding a smile behind her sleeve. "It was 20 bandits, not 100. And I had my guard with me. Still amazing." Lu Mei's admiration was genuine and uncomplicated. "Can you teach me to fight?" "Ladies don't." Zhang Wei began automatically, then stopped. Mei Lin had known how to fight. She had insisted on learning, saying an empress should be able to protect herself. He had taught her himself in the early days of their marriage. I already know some moves, Liu Mei continued, oblivious to his internal struggle. Uncle Chun taught me basic forms. He said I was a natural. Uncle Chun, Zhang Wei's voice sharpened. My master at arms has been teaching you. Liu Yin coughed delicately. He visits sometimes. He said someone should carry on the imperial fighting style. Zhang Wei felt another crack in his carefully constructed walls. His oldest friend, the man who had taught him to fight, had been secretly training his abandoned daughter. How many others had stepped in to fill the void he had left? Show me, he heard himself say. Liu Mei's face creaked in it. Now, after dinner, Zhang Wei clarified. Fighting on a full stomach is unwise. The meal continued with Liu Mei chattering about her lessons, her friends in the southern province, the cat that lived in her aunt's garden, and had just had kittens. Zhang Wei found himself listening, occasionally asking questions that sent her into new spirals of enthusiasm. And then, the smallest kitten. I named him Brave because he's always trying to fight his bigger siblings. He climbed all the way up the cherry tree. Aunt Yin was so worried, but I told her cats always land on their feet. And he did. You name a cat Brave? Zhang Wei asked, bemused. All creatures deserve good names, Liu Mei said seriously. Names have power. That's what Mother Wang says. Mother Wang, my tutor. She's teaching me to read and write properly. Look, Liu Mei pulled up her sleeve to reveal ink stains on her arm. I practiced so much yesterday that the ink went everywhere. I can write 300 characters now. 300 is impressive for your age, Zhang Wei acknowledged. Liu Mei beamed at the praise, then, suddenly, grew serious. Papa, can I ask you something important? Zhang Wei tensed. What? Do you miss Mama? The question hung in the air like a sword. Liu Yin started to intervene, but Zhang Wei held up a hand. Yes, he said quietly. Every day. Liu Mei nodded solemnly. Me too, even though I never met her. Is that silly? No. The word came out rougher than intended. It's not silly at all. I talk to her sometimes, Liu Mei admitted. Like today in the garden. I tell her about my day and ask her questions. Aunt Yin says that's okay. That Mama hears me even if she can't answer. Zhang Wei's throat tightened. This child, raised without either parent, had found her own way to connect with a mother she'd never known. While he had buried himself in work and bitterness, she had kept Mei Lin's memory alive through simple faith. What do you tell her? He asked. Liu Mei played with her chopsticks, suddenly shy. Everything. When I learned to write my first character, when I made my first friend, when I carved the dragon for you. She glanced up. I told her I was coming to meet you. I asked her to help me be brave. You are brave, Zhang Wei said, meaning it. Coming here took great courage. I was scared, Liu Mei admitted. The palace is so big, and everyone said the Dragon Emperor was fierce and terrible. But then I saw you in the garden, and you just looked sad. Not scary at all. Out of the mouths of children, Zhang Wei thought. In minutes, she had seen what his ministers and generals couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge, that his fierce reputation masked deep sorrow. I've been sad, he admitted, the words difficult but necessary, for a very long time. But maybe, Liu Mei bit her lip, gathering courage. Maybe you don't have to be sad alone anymore. If you want company, I'm good at being quiet when people need to think. Aunt Yin taught me. The offer was so simple, so pure, that Zhang Wei felt his eyes burn with unshed tears. When was the last time someone had offered to simply be with him, not wanting anything except his presence? I would like that, he managed. Liu Mei's smile could have lit the entire palace. She reached for another dumpling, then paused. Papa, your dragon is very nice. Zhang Wei frowned, confused. My dragon? The one I made you. You put it somewhere safe, right? It's not very strong, so it needs to be careful. He realized she was worried about her gift. It's in the throne room, he assured her. On a special table where I can see it while I work. Really? Her eyes went wide. In the actual throne room? With all the important things? It is important, Zhang Wei said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. Liu Yin cleared her throat. Perhaps Liu Mei could tell her father about her other talents? She's quite accomplished for her age. And young, Liu Mei protested, embarrassed. What talents? Zhang Wei asked, genuinely curious. Liu Mei squirmed. It's nothing special. I can play the guqin a little, and paint, and I know some poems. She won the Southern Province Poetry Competition, Lu Yin added proudly, competing against children twice her age. Aunt Yin, Lu Mei's face flushed red. Papa doesn't want to hear about that. Actually, Zhang Wei said I do. And he did. He wanted to know everything about this child he had missed. 7 years of first words, and first steps of scraped knees, and bedtime stories of small triumphs, and childhood fears. He couldn't get those years back, but he could start learning who his daughter had become. Well, Lu Mei began hesitantly. The theme was home, and everyone wrote about houses and families. But I wrote about how home isn't a place, it's the people who love you. The judges said it showed unusual maturity of thought. She made a face. I don't know what that means, but they gave me first place. Home is the people who love you. From a child who had been denied her true home for 7 years. Zhang Wei wondered if the judges had known the poem's deeper significance. Would you recite it for me? He asked. Lu Mei glanced at Lu Yin, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, she began, Home is not in walls of stone, nor in gardens where flowers grow. Home is in my aunt's gentle hand, in stories of a mother I'll never know. Home is in my father's distant throne, where dragons guard his lonely heart. Home is knowing love remains, even when we're apart. Someday I'll find my way to him, and maybe he'll see what I see, that home was always waiting here in you, in him, in me. Silence followed the recitation. Lu Yin was dabbing at her eyes with her sleeve. Zhang Wei sat frozen, the words echoing in his mind. His 7-year-old daughter had understood something he had forgotten. That home was about connection, not location. That love could persist despite distance and time. He began, then had to stop and clear his throat. That's beautiful, Lu Mei. She peeked up at him through her lashes. You really think so? Some of the other children said it didn't rhyme properly. The best poems touch the heart, Zhang Wei said. Proper rhyming is less important than truth. Lu Mei straightened, glowing at the praise. Mother Wang says I should keep practicing. She says maybe someday I could be a court poet. Perhaps you will, Zhang Wei agreed. The court could use more truth and less flattery. Lu Yin nearly choked on her tea at that observation. Even some of the servants looked startled. The emperor was not known for criticizing court customs. The rest of dinner passed more easily. Lu Mei, emboldened by her father's interest, shared more stories. She told him about the traveling opera that had visited their town, demonstrating the funny faces the actors made. She described the first snow of winter and how she had built a snow dragon in the courtyard. She even confessed to the time she had tried to teach herself to use a sword and accidentally broken a very expensive vase. Aunt Yin was so upset, she giggled. But then she started laughing because I was holding the sword backwards the whole time. Basic grip is essential, Zhang Wei found himself saying. Tomorrow, I'll show you the proper way. Lu Mei's chopsticks clattered to the table. Really? You'll teach me yourself? If you're going to learn imperial sword forms, you should learn them correctly. The decision felt right. Master Chun had kept the tradition alive in his absence. Now it was time for him to take up the responsibility. Papa, Lu Mei said solemnly, this is the best day ever. Such simple words, but they hit Zhang Wei like a physical blow. The best day ever, and all he had done was eat dinner with her and show basic interest in her life. How low had he set the bar that this was enough to bring her such joy? After dinner, they moved to a small courtyard adjacent to the dining room. The snow had stopped falling, leaving everything blanketed in pristine white. Lanterns cast warm pools of light, creating an intimate space in the vast palace complex. First, Zhang Wei said, falling into the familiar role of teacher, show me what Master Chen taught you. Lu Mei took a deep breath and moved through a basic form. Her movements were careful but uncertain, clearly learned by rote rather than understanding. Still, she had good balance and a natural grace that spoke of potential. Not bad, Zhang Wei said when she finished. But you're thinking too much. Fighting isn't about perfect movements. It's about flowing like water, adapting to each moment. He demonstrated the same form, his body remembering the movements even after years of neglect. Lu Mei watched with intense concentration, her eyes tracking every shift of weight, every turn of his wrist. Again, he said, this time, don't think about each move. Feel them connect. Lu Mei tried again, and this time there was marginal improvement. They worked for nearly an hour, Zhang Wei correcting her stance, adjusting her arms, teaching her to breathe with the movements rather than holding her breath in concentration. Papa, Lu Mei panted during a break. Why did you stop practicing? Aunt Yin says he used to train every morning. Zhang Wei paused in brushing snow from bench. Another simple question that cut to the heart. I lost my reason for training. Because of Mama? He nodded slowly. Your mother used to watch me practice. She'd sit right there, he pointed to a corner of the courtyard, and pretend to read, but I always caught her peeking over her book. Did she train too? Yes. She was quite skilled, actually. She said an empress should be as capable as an emperor. Zhang Wei found himself smiling at the memory. She had a particular talent for throwing knives. Lu Mei's eyes went wide. Really? My mama could throw knives? With deadly accuracy. She once bet me she could pin a falling cherry blossom to a tree. I lost. What did you have to give her when you lost? Zhang Wei's smile deepened. I had to compose a poem praising her skill and recite it at the next court gathering. Liu Mei giggled. Did you? I did. It was terrible poetry, but she loved it anyway. The memory was bittersweet, but not painful as he'd expected. Sharing it with his daughter seemed to ease the ache somehow. They resumed training, and Lu Mei showed marked improvement. She was a quick learner, absorbing corrections without complaint and pushing herself to do better. When she finally completed the form with reasonable skill, she looked at him hopefully. Better, Zhang Wei acknowledged. With practice, you could be quite good. As good as Mama? Perhaps. You have her determination. He hesitated, then added, and my stubbornness. Lu Mei beamed as if he'd given her the greatest compliment in the world. Will you teach me more tomorrow? If you wish. Zhang Wei found himself looking forward to it. Teaching his daughter connected him to the past while building toward a future, something he hadn't thought possible. Lu Yin, who had been quietly observing, stood. It's getting late. Lu Mei should rest. I'm not tired, Lu Mei protested, then immediately yawned, making them all smile. Come, Lu Yin said gently. You can see your father tomorrow. Lu Mei looked at Zhang Wei uncertainly. Can I? Really? Yes, he assured her. We'll have breakfast together. And training. Lu Mei took a few steps toward her aunt, then, suddenly, ran back to Zhang Wei. Before he could react, she had wrapped her small arms around his waist in a fierce hug. Thank you, Papa, she whispered against his robes. Thank you for not sending me away. Zhang Wei stood frozen, his arms hovering uncertainly. How long since someone had embraced him? How long since he had allowed such contact? Slowly, carefully, as if she might shatter, he placed one hand on his daughter's head. Sleep well, Lu Mei, he managed. She pulled back, smiling up at him with such trust it took his breath away. Then, she ran to Lu Yin, taking her aunt's hand. At the doorway, she turned and waved, as had become her habit. This time, Zhang Wei waved back without hesitation. When they were gone, he remained in the courtyard, processing the evening's events. In a few short hours, his carefully ordered world had been thoroughly disrupted. The palace that had felt like a tomb now echoed with a child's laughter. The silence he had cultivated for 7 years had been filled with chatter about kittens and snow dragons. He should feel invaded, overwhelmed, angry at the disruption. Instead, he felt alive. Your Majesty? Minister Chen appeared in the doorway, his elderly face creased with concern. I heard you were teaching the princess sword forms. Zhang Wei turned to face his old teacher and friend. You've been training her in secret. It wasn't a question. Minister Chen had the grace to look slightly ashamed. She has natural talent. It seemed wrong to waste it. All these years you visited her. Once a month, Chen admitted. Lady Lu Yin permitted it. The child was eager to learn anything connected to her parents. And you never told me. Chen met his emperor's gaze steadily. Would you have listened, Your Majesty? You made it clear the child was not to be mentioned. Zhang Wei couldn't argue with that truth. What else haven't you told me? General Han's wife teaches her calligraphy. Master Lu from the astronomy tower shows her the stars when he visits the south. Half your court has found excuses to meet her, teach her, watch over her. Chen's voice grew bold. She is loved, Your Majesty, by all who know her. Except her father, Zhang Wei said bitterly. That, Chen said quietly, is changing, is it not? Zhang Wei thought of the wooden dragon, now sitting in his throne room, of Lu Mei's poem about home, of the trust in her eyes when she hugged him. Perhaps, he admitted, she is not what I expected. Chen actually smiled. Children rarely are. May I speak freely, Your Majesty? Zhang Wei nodded. Your wife would be proud. The child has her warmth, her quick mind, her ability to find joy in small things. But she also has your strength, your determination, your sense of honor. Chen paused. She is the best of both her parents. She deserves better than a broken father, Zhang Wei said quietly. She deserves her father, broken or whole, Chen corrected. And perhaps, in healing her heart, you might find your own healing as well. The old master bowed and departed, leaving Zhang Wei alone with his thoughts. He walked to the spot where Mei Lin used to sit, imagining her there with her book, pretending not to watch him train. What would she think of their daughter? Would she approve of how Lu Yin had raised her? Would she forgive him for 7 years of absence? She wrote me a poem, he said to the empty courtyard. About home. She said home is where love waits, even when we're apart. His voice cracked. I sent her away, Mei Lin. Our daughter. I sent her away because I was too weak to face the pain. The wind rustled through the bare branches, and for a moment, Zhang Wei could almost hear his wife's voice. Then, stop being weak. She needs you, and you need her. He returned to the palace, but instead of going to his chambers, he found himself walking to the throne room. The vast space was dim, lit only by a few braziers. There on the side table sat the wooden dragon, keeping watch. Zhang Wei picked it up, studying it in the flickering light. Such a small thing to carry such weight. But wasn't that the nature of transformative moments? They came not in grand gestures, but in small acts of love. Your Majesty? A guard had noticed him. Is everything well? Yes, Zhang Wei said, still holding the dragon. Have my study prepared. And bring me the reports on the southern province. All of them. If his daughter was to stay, and he realized he wanted her to stay, then he needed to know everything about the life she had lived. 7 years of reports he had ignored, of developments he had deliberately avoided. It was time to stop hiding from the truth. The guard bowed and hurried away. Zhang Wei settled into his study as servants brought stack after stack of documents. Birth records, education reports, provincial celebrations Lu Mei had attended, even sketches of her artwork that proud tutors had included in their correspondence. He read through the night, piecing together the life of the daughter he had abandoned. She had been sick with fever at age 3, and Lu Yin had sat by her bedside for 5 days straight. She had won her first calligraphy competition at age 5, writing the character for love with unusual grace. She had befriended a street orphan and shared her own food until Lu Yin officially took the boy into their household as a companion for her. Every report painted the same picture, a child full of life and compassion, raised with love despite her father's absence. A child who spoke of him with pride rather than bitterness, who had constructed an elaborate fantasy of a father too important and busy to visit but who surely loved her from afar. Zhang Wei's eyes burned as he read. Lu Yin had told their daughter beautiful lies to protect her from the ugly truth. And Lu Mei had believed them, had built her whole sense of self around the idea that she was loved by both parents, even if one was absent. Dawn was breaking by the time he reached the most recent reports. Lu Mei's journey to the capital was documented in detail. How she had saved her meager allowance to buy supplies for his gift. How she had practiced her greeting 100 times. How she had barely slept from excitement, as they traveled north. She brought 3 different robes. Lu Yin had written in a note attached to the travel documents. She couldn't decide which one would make you proud. Zhang Wei set down the papers and rubbed his tired eyes. Outside, servants were beginning their morning routines. Soon, Lu Mei would wake, eager for their promised breakfast together. He should rest, prepare himself. But one document remained, set apart from the others. He recognized Lu Yan's personal seal. Opening it, he found a letter dated just days before their arrival. "My dear brother," it began, "I write this knowing you may never read it, but I must try once more. Lu Mei is no longer a baby you can pretend doesn't exist. She is a bright, loving child who asks harder questions each year. How much longer can I lie to her? How much longer can I pretend her father loves her when he won't even read reports of her existence? She has your intelligence and Mei Lin's heart. She practices sword forms in secret, hoping to impress you someday. She memorizes poetry about fathers and daughters. She saves every coin to buy paper for the letters she writes you, but never sends. I have raised her as my own and would continue gladly, but she needs more. She needs her father, and whether you admit it or not, you need her too. Your grief has become a prison, Wei. Let your daughter be the key. I'm bringing her for Christmas, that foreign holiday she's fascinated with. She believes in its magic, in families reuniting and hearts changing. I pray she's right. Your stubborn, loving sister, Lu Yin." Zhang Wei carefully folded the letter. His sister had risked everything: his wrath, her comfortable position, Lu Mei's innocent faith, on the chance that he might finally open his heart. And it had worked. 1 wooden dragon, 1 child's smile, and 7 years of walls had begun to crumble. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Your Majesty, the princess is awake and asking, that is, hoping." The servant struggled with the informal message. "She wants to know if you really meant it about breakfast. Tell her I'll join her shortly," Zhang Wei said, "and have the informal dining room prepared again." As the servant left, Zhang Wei looked once more at the wooden dragon on his desk. Protection, Lu Mei had said. But protection from what? Now he understood. She hadn't given him a guardian against external threats. She had given him protection against the internal ones, against bitterness, isolation, the slow death of the soul that came from refusing to feel. He washed and changed into fresh robes, choosing simpler ones than his usual formal attire. If he was going to attempt being a father, he might as well look the part. The mirror showed a man who had aged more than his years, lines of sorrow etched deeply into his face. But there was something different about his eyes. The cold fire that had earned him his dragon reputation had warmed slightly. Lu Mei was already in the dining room when he arrived, bouncing slightly in her seat with excitement. She had clearly tried to tame her hair, but several strands had already escaped. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Papa, I was worried you might be too busy after all. I said we would have breakfast together," Zhang Wei replied, taking his seat. "I keep my word." "I know," Lu Mei said simply. "Aunt Yin says the Dragon Emperor's word is like iron. Unbending, unbreaking," Zhang Wei corrected, then added, "though perhaps some flexibility is not always bad." Lu Mei giggled at that. "Like in sword training, you said a flow like water." "Exactly." He was pleased she had retained the lesson. "Did you sleep well?" "Oh yes. My room is beautiful. There's a painting of dragons on the ceiling, and the bed is so soft, it's like sleeping on clouds." She paused. "Is it really my room? Not just for visiting?" The hope in her voice was painful. "It's yours for as long as you're here." "How long can I stay?" Zhang Wei found himself saying. "How long would you like to stay?" Lu Mei bit her lip. "Forever? But I know that's not. I mean, you're very busy and important and—" "Lu Mei," he interrupted gently. "You're important too." Her eyes widened. "I am. You're my daughter. That makes you the most important person in the empire after the emperor himself." "Oh," she digested this. "Does that mean I can have extra sweet dumplings?" Despite himself, Zhang Wei felt his lips twitch. "It means you can have a reasonable amount of sweet dumplings." "What's reasonable?" "Less than you want. More than your aunt usually allows." Liu Mei grinned. "I can work with that." Breakfast was served, and Lu Mei chattered about her dreams, her plans for the day, her hopes to see more of the palace. Zhang Wei found himself relaxing, even occasionally contributing to the conversation. It was easier than last night, as if muscles long and used were remembering their function. "Papa," Lu Mei said suddenly, "can I meet the court? Aunt Yin says there are hundreds of ministers, and they all wear different colored robes based on their jobs." Zhang Wei considered this. Court can be boring for a child. I won't be bored. I'll be quiet and watch and learn everything. The ministers might not know how to behave around you, he warned. They're used to a very formal atmosphere. Lu Mei straightened in her chair. I can be formal. Watch. She put on a serious expression that was clearly meant to mimic his own. The effect was more adorable than intimidating. Perhaps a brief introduction, Zhang Wei conceded. But you must stay close to me and not speak unless spoken to. I promise. Lu Mei bounced again. Will they be scared of me like they're scared of you? I doubt anyone could be scared of you, Zhang Wei said dryly. Good. Being scary seems lonely. She tilted her head. Are you lonely, Papa? Once again, her directness caught him off guard. I have been. Yes. Well, you don't have to be anymore, Lu Mei said matter-of-factly. I'm here now. And Aunt Yin. And you have all those ministers, even if they are scared of you. Fear and companionship are not the same thing, Zhang Wei found himself explaining. Then, why do you scare them? Because, he paused, realizing he didn't have a good answer. Because it's easier than the alternative. What's the alternative? Letting them close enough to disappoint you, or hurt you, or leave you. Lu Mei considered this seriously. But if you don't let anyone close, then you're alone anyway. Isn't that worse? 7 years of philosophy distilled by a 7-year-old child. Zhang Wei wondered when his daughter had become so wise. Perhaps you're right, he admitted. Aunt Yin says I'm right about a lot of things, Lu Mei said with a touch of pride. She also says I talk too much. Do I talk too much, Papa? No, Zhang Wei said, meaning it. I've had enough silence. After breakfast, they walked to the throne room together. Lu Mei's hand was small in his, but her grip was firm. She gasped when the great doors opened, revealing the full grandeur of the imperial court already assembled for the morning session. So many people, she whispered, and look at all the colors. Indeed, the ministers wore robes of deep blue, jade green, rich purple, and burgundy, their rank and department indicated by both color and intricate embroidery. They all turned as one when the emperor entered, then froze at the sight of the small girl at his side. Ministers of the court, Zhang Wei said, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. I present Princess Lu Mei, my daughter. The silence was deafening. Then, as one, the entire court dropped to their knees in formal bows. Lu Mei's eyes went impossibly wide. Do I bow back? She whispered urgently. No. A princess acknowledges, but does not bow to ministers, Zhang Wei instructed quietly. Lu Mei nodded regally, clearly trying to look properly imperial. The effect was somewhat undermined by the way she kept peeking at everything with barely contained curiosity. Rise, Zhang Wei commanded, and the court obeyed. He could see the questions in their eyes, the calculations beginning. The emperor's daughter, suddenly, acknowledged after 7 years. What did it mean? What changes would come? The princess will be residing in the palace, Zhang Wei continued, answering some unspoken questions. She is to be accorded all proper respect and honor. Yes, your majesty. The court responded in unison. Zhang Wei led Lu Mei to the throne, then hesitated. There was no seat for her. For 7 years, he had ruled alone from this solitary perch. Now, bring a chair, he commanded, suitable for the princess. There was a flurry of activity as servants scrambled to fulfill this unprecedented request. Soon, a smaller chair was placed beside the throne. It wasn't a throne itself. That would have too many implications, but it was clearly a seat of honor. Lu Mei climbed into it, her feet not quite touching the ground. She looked tiny next to Zhang Wei's imposing throne, but she sat with careful dignity, clearly taking her role seriously. The morning's business proceeded, though with far less efficiency than usual. Ministers stumbled over their reports, distracted by the small figure watching everything with intense curiosity. Lu Mei, true to her word, remained silent, though Zhang Wei could practically see the questions building up inside her. It was Minister Chun who finally broke the awkwardness. Approaching to give his military report, he paused before Lu Mei's chair. "Your Highness," he said formally, then winked. "That was an excellent crane stance yesterday. Perhaps we might practice the following sequence later." Lu Mei glanced at her father for permission. When he nodded slightly, she beamed at Chun. "Yes, please, Master Chun. Papa's teaching me to flow like water." "Ah, the fundamental principle. Your father was my best student in that regard." Chen's eyes twinkled. Though he had a tendency to overthink the movements at your age. "Papa overthought things?" Lu Mei giggled at the idea. "Still does, on occasion," Chun said with the ease of very old friendship. "Perhaps you'll help him remember that not everything requires such serious contemplation." Several ministers looked scandalized at this casual interaction, but Zhang Wei found himself almost smiling. "Give your report, Minister Chun, before you completely erode my authority." "Of course, Your Majesty." Chun proceeded with military matters, but the atmosphere had shifted. The court had seen their terrifying emperor allow teasing from his old master, had seen him look at his daughter with something approaching warmth. The rest of the session continued more smoothly. Lu Mei remained attentive throughout, occasionally tilting her head at complex discussions, but never interrupting. Zhang Wei found himself hyper-aware of her presence, wondering what she made of taxes and trade negotiations and border disputes. When the session finally ended and the ministers filed out, many pausing to bow specifically to Lu Mei, she turned to him with shining eyes. "That was amazing. Do you do that every day?" "Most days," Zhang Wei confirmed. "Was it as interesting as you hoped?" "Some parts were confusing," she admitted. "But I like watching you work. You're very emperorish. All serious and decisive and wise." She swung her feet. The Minister of Agriculture looked like he wanted to argue about the grain distribution, but he was too scared. Zhang Wei blinked. She had noticed that. "You're very observant. Aunt Yin says I notice too much sometimes." Lu Mei hopped down from her chair. "Papa, why don't you have more chairs up here? Don't you get lonely sitting by yourself?" There was again that innocent directness that cut straight to the heart of things. "The emperor sits alone. It's tradition. But traditions can change, can't they? You let me sit with you today. That's different. You're my daughter. What about Mama? Did she have a chair?" Zhang Wei's chest tightened. Yes. There was a throne beside mine. I had it removed." "Oh." Lu Mei absorbed this. "That must have made you even more lonely." He didn't know how to respond to that, so he changed the subject. "Cool, Mei. Master Chun will be waiting for your training." They spent the afternoon in the courtyard, Chun and Zhang Wei taking turns instructing Lu Mei in basic forms. She was an eager student, absorbing criticism and praise with equal enthusiasm. When she successfully completed a particularly difficult sequence, she literally jumped for joy. "I did it. Did you see, Papa? I did it. I saw," Zhang Wei confirmed. "Well done. Your daughter has natural talent," Chen observed. "With proper training, she could be formidable. I want to be the best fighter in the Empire." Lu Mei declared, then paused. "After Papa, of course." "Of course," Chen said solemnly, though his eyes danced with amusement. "Though perhaps we should master walking before we run, young princess." As the sun began to set, painting the snow-covered courtyard in shades of gold and pink, Lu Yin appeared. "I see someone has been busy," she said, taking in Lu Mei's disheveled appearance and bright eyes. "Both of you, it seems." Zhang Wei realized he had been training alongside his daughter for the past hour, moving through forms he hadn't practiced in years. His muscles would be sore tomorrow, but it felt good. Alive. "Aunt Yin, Papa, and Master Chun are teaching me everything. Look what I can do." As Lu Mei demonstrated her newly acquired skills, Lu Yin moved closer to her brother. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving her a chance, for giving yourself a chance. Zhang Wei searched for words. "She's remarkable. She's your daughter. What else would she be?" Lu Yin smiled. "Though I warn you, her energy is exhausting." I've had 7 years to build up stamina. Papa doesn't get tired, Lu Mei announced, having finished her demonstration. He's too strong. Everyone gets tired, little one, Lu Yin said gently. Not Papa. He's special. The faith in her voice was humbling. Zhang Wei had done nothing to earn such devotion, yet she offered it freely. Perhaps we should rest before dinner, he suggested. You've trained hard today. Can we eat together again? In the pretty room with the garden view? If you wish. I wish. And can you tell me more stories about Mama? Aunt Yin tells me some, but you knew her best. Zhang Wei felt the familiar pain at the mention of Mei Lin, but it was muted now, softened by the eager curiosity in his daughter's eyes. What would you like to know? Everything. What was her favorite color? Did she like snow? Could she really throw knives? Did she laugh a lot? What made her happy? One question at a time, Zhang Wei said, but he found himself almost looking forward to answering them. Sharing Mei Lin's memory with their daughter felt like a gift rather than a burden. As they walked back to the palace, Lu Mei between the two adults, she reached out and took both their hands. Such a simple gesture, but it connected them in a way that felt profound. A family fractured and imperfect, but still a family. Papa, Lu Mei said as they climbed the steps. I'm glad I came. Even if you had sent me away, I'm glad I got to meet the days that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both foreign and natural. Each morning, Zhang Wei would wake to find Lu Mei already waiting in the small dining room, bouncing with excitement for whatever the day might bring. She had an opinion on everything, from the proper way to hold chopsticks, Aunt Yin says elegantly, but you hold them like weapons, Papa, to the philosophical implications of snow. It makes everything equal, all white and clean and new. On the 5th morning of her stay, Zhang Wei entered the dining room to find Lu Mei carefully arranging something on the table. As he got closer, he saw it was a collection of small objects. A smooth river stone, a dried flower, a piece of jade no bigger than her thumb, and several folded paper creations. What's this? He asked, taking his seat. Lu Mei looked up with serious eyes. My treasures. I thought you should see them. Your treasures. She nodded, touching each item reverently. This stone is from a stream near Aunt Yan's house. I found it the day I learned to swim. And this flower is from Mama's favorite plant. Aunt Yin has one in her garden. The jade was a gift from Master Chen last year. And these, she gestured to the paper figures, are all the dragons I practiced making before yours. Zhang Wei studied the collection. To anyone else, it would look like random childhood detritus. But he understood the significance. These were her anchors, her connections to home and family. Why did you want me to see them? Lu Mei bit her lip, suddenly shy. Because I want you to know me. Really know me. Not just the princess parts, but all of me. The vulnerability in her voice caught at something in his chest. She was offering him her whole self, trusting him with her small treasures and the stories they held. Tell me about the swimming lesson, he said softly. Her face lit up as she launched into the tale, featuring a patient aunt, a stubborn child, and eventually triumph over fear. Zhang Wei found himself seeing his daughter more clearly. She wasn't just a reminder of loss or an abstract concept of an heir. She was Lu Mei, collector of stories and stones, maker of paper dragons, keeper of memories. After breakfast, instead of heading to the throne room, Zhang Wei made an unexpected decision. Would you like to see the imperial treasury? He asked. Lu Mei's eyes widened. The real treasury? With all the gold and jewels, among other things. Yes, please. The treasury was housed in the most secure part of the palace, protected by guards and ancient locks that required 3 different keys. Lu Mei watched in fascination as Zhang Wei